Hello and welcome to our webinar. Today we'll discuss the new U.S. Faster Payments Council. I'm Jean Rourke from the Center for Learning Innovation at the St. Louis Federal Reserve, and I'll be your moderator. Jackie Gussner will facilitate our conversation and will introduce our speakers. Before turning the call over to Jackie, I'll run through our call logistics. If you haven't joined us through the webinar yet, go ahead and click the link you received after registering. For the best webinar experience, use the FAQ document, which can be found using the Materials button in the webinar player page. I'll highlight a few important notes for you. You can listen to the audio through your PC speakers or through the phone. If you use the phone option, slides will not sync with audio unless you change your settings. You can do this by selecting the gray gear located on the upper right corner of the slide window just above the presentation. From there, you should see a few options in the media chooser, and you should select the phone option, but that's only if you're listening to today's webinar through the phone. You can expand the size of the slides, and to do this, use the Maximize button in the upper right corner of the slide window, and that's located on the webinar player page. And if you'd like a PDF version of today's presentation, you can access it using the Materials button. We'll be taking questions from our participants, and you can submit them anytime during our call. If you joined us via webinar, just click the Ask Question button, and we'll get your questions queued up for our speakers today. With all of that out of the way, it's now my pleasure to turn the call over to Jackie Gussner.
Thank you, Jean. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the U.S. Faster Payments Council, or FPC for short. My name is Jackie Gussner, and I'm a leader in the Federal Reserve's Industry Relations Program. I am joined today by three presenters who are among the more than 36 founding sponsors or members of the new FPC, and they include Susan Doyle of Commerce Bank, Roy DeChico of J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, and Deborah Phillips of Jack Henry & Associates. So what is the U.S. Faster Payments Council? Well, it's a new fee-based membership organization that's open to any stakeholder with an interest in the payment system. Its mission is to work toward a world-class payment system where Americans can safely and securely pay anyone, anywhere, at any time, and with near immediate funds availability. And the organization will use collaborative problem-solving approaches to remove the barriers to adoption to achieve faster payments ubiquity in the United States. Today's presentation will provide more details about the FPC, and we'll be pausing at several points along the presentation to give you an opportunity to ask your questions. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to our first presenter, Deborah. Deborah?
Thank you, Jackie, and good morning to everyone on the webinar. As we get started, I want all of us to think about some of the ways faster payments could positively impact consumers, corporations, small businesses, and other end users. I'm sure this group could think of hundreds of different ways. Some of the first that come to my mind are a disaster victim could instantly receive a claim payment when their home is destroyed by a hurricane. A renter who is waiting for funds to be available and could pay his landlord immediately when rent is due and avoid penalty fees. Or perhaps a small business owner could use faster payments to better manage their cash flow. Or a college student using summer income to pay for classes could make a just-in-time tuition payment so that they're able to register and start classes on time. As we think about today's increasingly mobile digital economy, Americans require a world-class payment system where they can safely and securely pay anyone, anywhere, at any time with near immediate funds availability. So today, we're here to introduce to you the U.S. Faster Payments Council, a new organization whose mission is to work with all stakeholders to meet the evolving end-user needs by advancing the faster payments ecosystem, driving the emerging faster payments infrastructure toward ubiquity, and fostering a high-quality and secure experience for all. Moving on to slide 5. In an ideal world, payment transactions would be as seamless and transparent to end users as mobile texting. But the complexities of the U.S. payment system, involving thousands of financial institutions, hundreds of non-bank bank payment service providers and millions of individuals and businesses, well, that makes that challenging. In its final report issued in July of 2017, the Faster Payments Task Force, a group of more than 320 diverse industry stakeholders, recommended ongoing collaboration to fulfill its vision of ubiquitous, broadly inclusive, safe, highly secure, and efficient faster payments by 2020. Specifically, it called for establishing a faster payments governance framework inclusive of all stakeholders to facilitate ubiquity of faster payments. In fulfillment of the Faster Payments Task Force vision, and after a year of broad industry discussion and feedback, we're now standing on the threshold of establishing the U.S. Faster Payments Council. The FPC will address the most pressing issues that are inhibiting widespread use of faster payments. These include support of adoption of practices that enhance safety and security for service providers and users of faster payments, to identify, develop, and support principles, guidelines, and additional market practices that will address opportunities and emerging issues in an open and collaborative way, and to develop an educational and awareness program to foster better understanding of faster payments. Moving on to slide 6. While many of you have been part of these efforts over the last few years, we wanted to provide a quick review of how this came to be. The public-private partnership began in 2015 when the Federal Reserve published its paper on strategies for improving the U.S. payment system. Shortly thereafter, the Faster Payments Task Force was created, with membership growing to more than 320 individuals. The following year, the Faster Payments Task Force published the U.S. Path to Faster Payments paper, which laid out its plan and vision for secure, ubiquitous, faster payments by 2020. The final report also included a key recommendation for a governance framework to be created for faster payments. This key recommendation spurred the creation of the Governance Framework Formation Team, also known as the GIFT, of which I was a member. The GIFT included 27 members representing all segments of the U.S. payment system. Then in April of this year, the GIFT team published a proposed operating vision for a new organization, the U.S. Faster Payments Council. This operating vision was then shared with a broad range of industry stakeholders for feedback, which was very instructive to the GIFT in affirming our work, as well as revealing areas that needed further deliberation. Over the summer, the GIFT members have been updating the framework based on this feedback so that the U.S. Faster Payments Council can best meet industry needs. And so now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Susan Doyle.
Thank you, Deborah. So on slide 7, we're going to talk about breaking down the barriers. As a new organization, the FPC must channel its resources toward the most pressing challenges and opportunities in the race to faster payments ubiquity. Through its forums for member dialogue and collaboration, the FPC addresses issues that inhibit adoption of faster payments. A first key issue within faster payments today is to support adoption of practices that enhance safety and security for service providers and users of faster payments. A second focus of the FPC will be to resolve issues that inhibit ubiquity. And finally, the FPC will identify, develop, and support principles, guidelines, and additional market practices that will address opportunities and emerging issues in an open and collaborative way. Going on to slide 8, the FPC is really organized for action. Working group members can expect to participate in monthly meetings contributed to planning and execution of work products and provide periodic progress reports to the FPC board, the broader FPC membership, and external payment stakeholders. Currently, there are 6 individual work groups. Safety and Security Work Group, This work group will promote adoption of practices that enhance safety and security for service providers and users of faster payments, fostering a high-quality user experience for all and bolstering confidence and trust, which ultimately supports achievement of a broader adoption. The scope of this group will be serving as a clearinghouse to provide for providers to share strategies, policies, practices, and capabilities intended to keep the payment system safe and protect end users. Soliciting strategies, policies, practices, and capabilities from members, as well as conduct research as needed to identify relevant strategies, policies, practices, and capabilities from non-member entities. The Fraud Information Sharing Work Group works with existing fraud sharing forums to identify enhancements that will make the current information sharing processes more efficient and effective, with an aim towards fostering better user experiences, bolstering confidence and trust in faster payments, facilitating faster reaction times to address threats to the ecosystem, with the scope of this group determining what is meant by fraud information and determining the benefits of creating common definitions for fraud statistics to be used in reporting and education. For instance, attack rates, fraud losses, recovery rates. In addition to awareness of specific scams, fraud information could also include understanding of how the tactics work and sharing fraud prevention techniques. Surveying other fraud information sharing forums to identify gaps and opportunities for collaboration. Establishing any needed guidelines for the FPC's role, such as a safe harbor type protection or limits of liability for sharing information. The Directories Model Work Group. This work group will evaluate information, including reports produced by other industry-led work groups, intended to identify and assess an approach for a multi-entity directory model for the faster payments ecosystem. The scope would be analyzing the FPC's role regarding directory models for the faster payments ecosystem. And then there's the End User Transparency Work Group. This work group promotes service provider strategies, policies, practices, and capabilities that provide end users with transparency into what to expect when making faster payments, ultimately bolstering confidence in faster payments, which results in greater adoption. The overall scope of this group would be identifying a list of areas where transparency for end users is important, encouraging service providers to provide information to customers in the most appropriate context, and setting expectations for what sort of information should be transparent at what stage of the process, for instance, when signing up for the service, or when making payments, or when reviewing prior activity. The fourth work group is the Regulation and Regulatory Guidance Work Group. The Regulations and Regulatory Guidance Group will evaluate information, including reports produced by other industry-led groups, to identify and assess regulations and regulatory guidance that can accelerate the adoption of faster payments. The scope of this group will be analyzing the FPC's role regarding regulations and regulatory guidance for the faster payments ecosystem, which may include identifying participants important to reach out to for engagement, for instance, local, state, and federal regulatory agencies and industry advocates. The last group is the Education and Awareness Work Group. This work group will develop an educational and awareness program to foster better understanding of faster payments and confidence amongst providers and users, ultimately driving adoption and transaction volumes toward the industry goal of ubiquity. This work group's scope would be surveying existing educational materials according to audience, consumer, business end users, financial institutions, other service providers, etc., to identify gaps and opportunities for faster payments information, determining opportunities for collaboration and partnerships with existing organizations, establishing a continuous assessment to ensure education and awareness materials are produced in an efficient manner, reach the intended audiences, and help reduce market misperceptions or confusion and drive adoption of faster payments. Each of the work groups within their scope will determine the work group's product priorities and the best method for reporting output to members as well as to the industry in general, if applicable. Transitioning to slide 9, the establishment of the FPC was informed by you, industry stakeholders. From April 24th to June 22nd, the GIF conducted a survey designed to elicit feedback on the FPC's draft operating vision. The survey allowed the GIF members to attain valuable feedback on the proposed approach to the mission, guiding principles, the structure, authority, funding, and core focus areas of the FPC. The 34-question online survey generated 178 responded submissions. The respondents provided more than 1,000 written comments in support of the ratings they provided for each question. Overall, survey respondents indicated a robust level for support for the FPC as described in the operating vision. More than 85% of the respondents indicated agreement with the guiding principles, and 70% indicated some level of agreement with the FPC's likely effectiveness in facilitating ubiquity. At the same time, certain aspects of FPC's operating vision had considerable less support across the industry segments. For example, on funding, a majority of large financial institutions, business end users, and consumer interest groups either were neutral or disagreed with the overall level of agreement, with just slightly higher than a simple majority at 56%. In addition, although majorities in all segments indicated at least some level of agreement with the proposed composition and the role of the board, significant minorities in many stakeholder segments either strongly or generally disagreed. This feedback was valuable input to the GIF in informing our deliberations as we work to finalize the operating framework for the FPC. Let's go into more specifics. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Deborah to discuss about the guiding principles. Deborah?
Thank you, Susan. What sets the FPC apart isn't just what it's going to do, but how it's going to do this. As a principles-based organization, the FPC structure, operations, and activities are designed to adhere to the fundamental principles of inclusiveness and fairness, flexibility and responsiveness, and transparency in decision-making. So I'll talk first about inclusiveness and fairness. Through diverse segment-level representation on the board and open opportunities to serve on committees and work groups, all active members have a voice in the direction of the FPC's work and will be informed by the perspectives of other members. Moving on to flexibility and responsiveness, the FPC focuses on the broader good while upholding competitive prerogatives and respecting members' ability to manage their own business operations. And transparency. The FPC has clear processes for internal deliberations and decision-making that are open, transparent, and objective. Open, inclusive opportunities to exchange opinions and resolve differences will ideally result in broad member support for FPC recommendations that go through formal decision-making processes and pass required vote thresholds specified in the bylaws. Moving on to slide 11, FPC members will have a variety of opportunities to get involved. They'll be able to engage in dialogue through in-person meetings, webinars, and other activities. All FPC members will have opportunities for dialogue on topics of interest to their organization and their industry segment. Influence. Voting members can run for the board, which will set strategic direction and ensure processes, activities, and recommendations of the FPC are consistent with its fundamental principles. Members will also be involved in problem solving. Volunteers who join FPC committees or work groups will work together with other experts from a range of industry segments to address hot topics and provide the important groundwork that will influence and inform decision-making. So I'll now turn the call over to Jackie.
Thanks, Deborah, and thanks, Susan. So we are going to be taking some questions at this point in time. Please use that Ask a Question button on your screen there. But just initially, we do have some questions that you all provided to us earlier when you registered for this event, and so I'm going to relay some of those right now. One of the questions was, will interoperability be a focus of the FPC? So Susan, Roy, or Deborah, would one of you like to take that one?
Yeah, Jackie, it's Roy. I'll take that question. Interoperability is an important topic and an important goal of a fast, efficient, and effective faster payments ecosystem for the United States. So that will be something that's very much on the radar screen of the Faster Payments Council. But even more so than the work that we might do to raise the issues around interoperability and to ensure that there's progress being made along that front, a lot of the heavy lifting and detailed work around interoperability will be done at the service provider level, the rail level, because what we're really looking for there is the ability to have a seamless end-to-end environment so that any participant through their bank can pay a counterparty regardless of where their counterparty's bank is a member of a faster payments environment, whether they're all within one system, whether the banks participate in different systems. You would need to create that interoperability to ensure transparency and the ability to get that transaction to its endpoint. So a lot of those technical discussions around interoperability would be done at the rail level on a bilateral basis or a multilateral basis. There could be other providers that would look for transparent overlay type services to have broad reach and connectivity to multiple rails so they reach all end users. And that's the level of detail that needs to be addressed as all of the market infrastructure providers look at interoperability and frankly figure it out. But it will be an important topic, important issue for the Faster Payments Council to participate as a partner, so to speak, in those discussions.
Okay, thank you, Roy. And here's another question. What benefit does FPC membership hold for business end users?
Jackie, this is Deborah. I'll be happy to take that question. So as we think about the benefits for all stakeholders, having a voice in the future of faster payments is very important. It's not that often that you have the ability to get in on the ground floor the way that members of the Faster Payments Council now have. So specifically for business users, this is a unique organization. It's been designed to be broadly inclusive to bring all stakeholders together. So business end users will have the ability to dialogue with operators, financial institutions, processors, and others. And that's not always the case with many organizations that have a much narrow focus. And by design, we've created this so that we do have a diverse membership of many stakeholders. And so business end users not only have a voice, they have an opportunity to have a seat at the table with the board and certainly in driving decisions that are meaningful for faster payments in the U.S.
Thank you, Deborah. Here's another question. How will the FPC assist a small community bank to be able to compete with P2P since products available to us are not fully functional with large banks?
Jackie, can you repeat that just one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure. How will the FPC assist a small community bank to be able to compete with P2P since products available to us are not fully functional with large banks?
You know, this is Susan. I'll take that question. You know, one of the opportunities that the FPC, because of its broad structure and membership, It gives the small banks, medium banks, and large banks the opportunity to collaborate together. While product sets may not be available within their organization, it does give them an opportunity to come to collaborate about the overall industry and the overall direction of faster payments. And so as products and services become more mainstream, it's more important for all of us to come together so that the groundwork that the FPC is creating helps to support eventually that product offering that those small and rural and community banks would be offering to their customers. So it's a seat at the table. It's a seat in the direction of faster payments so that when they come online, they have the opportunity and understanding of what faster payments benefits both for their customers and for their organization.
Thank you, Susan. Here's another question. Do we need to be part of a financial institution to participate in the work groups and committees of the FPC?
This is Deborah. I'll take that one. As mentioned earlier, we are designed to have a broad base of membership, and all members will have the ability to include members of their staff or their executives to be active in the work groups, and we hope that's the case. We hope for broad engagement, and the FPC will require a lot of the thought leadership from across our various stakeholder groups, and while financial institutions are an important group, we will also have network operators, technology providers, consumer organizations, business end users, and others that will be active. And so again, this is part of the unique design of the FPC. We welcome all.
Thank you, Deborah. Here's a question. How much time will a member need to commit to the FPC? Is there a way to select the issues in which I'm interested, thereby allowing me to make sure I spend my time only on the issues that are of interest to me?
This is Roy. I'll take that question, and the short answer to it is yes. You certainly could pick topics and initiatives that are interesting to your organization. You can, if you are the primary member of the FPC, you certainly can participate at a committee level or a work group level. And the organization is meant to be flexible enough where we would really welcome additional subject matter expertise on topics and initiatives so that a primary member to the FPC can look at an initiative and say, that's not for me, but I have an individual in my organization that has a lot of interest in that and is the right subject matter expert to contribute to that initiative. And they would submit them as a member of that group. So there's a lot of flexibility. This is an industry-run organization. It's there for the benefit of all of its members. And the way it's going to be successful is if our members do participate, do get engaged, find the topics and areas that are interesting to them where they could make a productive contribution and raise their hands and actively contribute to those initiatives, while also looking at other initiatives where they might have additional resources in their firm to do that. And of course, this is going to vary. You know, we've got a broad-based membership. We're going to have small organizations. We're going to have large organizations. And the larger organizations, by definition, will have more resources that could be available to contribute to the work of the FPC. Smaller organizations, probably less resources. That's okay. So the important thing is that everybody's engaged. That's how we're going to maximize the value of the organization and for everybody to get out of it what they hope to attain.
Thank you, Roy. Here's another question. We feel education of end users will be key in encouraging financial institutions to implement faster payments. So what will be the FPC's role in helping to market and promote faster payments at the consumer/business end user level?
Jackie, this is Susan. I'll be glad to take that question. You know, one of the work groups will focus primarily on education and awareness, and that education awareness obviously will be a prime example of consumer or user experience, but actually user education. And so that particular work group will spend a lot of time promoting education, developing information to be available to the end user for education purposes. So that particular work group is right in line with a quick win to get consumers to get that information out there so it's understandable. And that education material will be applicable to the individual segment that it's trying to educate. So there will be education materials for individuals, education materials for business end users, so that they understand what's happening in the marketplace. So that particular, anybody who's interested in education, that particular work group will be focused on providing education for the industry.
All right, thank you, Susan. We will continue to take questions at another point along the way here, but we're going to switch back now to the rest of our presentation. And Roy, if you could please speak to board structure and work groups and committees and the rest of our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Jackie, and hello, everybody. So on slide number 12, we're going to talk about the board structure. For those who have been following the work of the GIFT and its operating vision for the Faster Payments Council, the first thing you may note on this slide is that we've created an even distribution of board seats. The board comprises up to 21 voting members representing the voting membership segments. Each voting segment is allocated 3 seats. However, seat allocations that are not filled are left vacant. In addition, 3 at-large seats will be allocated to the 3 segments with the largest number of members in a manner described in the bylaws. No membership segment may have more than 4 seats. Within each segment, the composition of the directors will reflect the diversity of their segments. Each segment will vote to fill its own segment's board positions. Members of the FPC who wish to run for a seat within their segment must announce their candidacy within a prescribed period of time before the vote. Once elected, all directors have identical voting rights and responsibilities. Directors are expected to represent their segment interests by seeking feedback from their respective segments on a regular basis. They also have a duty to uphold the mission and fundamental principles of the Faster Payments Council. The voting membership elects the board of directors, which is accountable to the members for setting strategic direction and ensuring processes, activities, and recommendations are consistent with the fundamental principles of the FPC. In addition, the board is responsible for ensuring the views of segments with fewer members are heard during deliberations at the board, committee, and work group levels. Recognizing that members with limited resources, such as consumer organizations, small businesses, and small financial institutions, might not be well represented on committees and work groups, the board is responsible for determining the best way to address gaps in perspective. Other board responsibilities are described in the bylaws of the organization. On to the next slide, we'll talk a bit about work groups and committees. The functions of the Faster Payments Council are carried out by volunteers, we talked about this a little bit in the Q&A, who serve on FPC committees and work groups. Participation in committees and work groups is the primary avenue for influencing decisions affecting the direction of the FPC and its priorities. Committees are formal standing groups established by the board, reporting to the board and chaired by a board member. They have a long-term strategic or operational focus and may have decision-making authority delegated to them by the board. Work groups, on the other hand, are have a well-defined tactical focus and reporting structure, and they may vary in duration and are periodically evaluated by the board. Work groups deliberate on issues within their scope and provide input and recommendations to support decision-making. Membership in committees and work groups is typically open to all members, subject to the needs to ensure balance, inclusivity, and effectiveness. In addition, non-member subject matter experts may be invited to add perspective and fill knowledge gaps. Work groups will be open for observation at any time by any FPC member, and their documents will be available on a similar basis. On to the next slide. Member rights, responsibilities, and dues. The feedback we received from the industry also helped inform the GIF's approach to membership dues and specifically the funding tiers. The FPC has a tiered membership fee structure that takes into account the size of the participating organization or individual. Tiers for voting members are based on organizational revenue. Other membership options may be considered by the FPC as the organization evolves. The FPC is envisioned to be an efficient, lean, and adaptable organization with a small paid staff and reliance on volunteers, loaned resources, and experts. The projected annual funding need of $2 million per year supports the hiring of an experienced leader and covers administrative and support resources and expenses required to establish and advance the objectives of this organization. To meet these requirements, FPC funding will come from a variety of sources. In addition to membership dues, other revenue sources will be considered, such as donations or in-kind services and directed contributions that would be over and above membership dues. For example, to support an awareness campaign or production of end-user educational materials. Associate members are single-person businesses or individuals, such as academics, with a professional interest in payment issues who, if they are employed, are not in any way representing, reimbursed by, or funded by their employer organization. Associate members are non-voting members. All members, voting and non-voting, have the right to access work product and participate on committees and work groups. Voting members also have the right to vote on FPC recommendations and adopt decisions and recommendations of the FPC according to their individual organization's needs and prerogatives, including the choice to not adopt. Voting members also have the right to vote for board members and to seek a seat on the board. So I think that's the end of my slides.
All right, we will now
oh, no, sorry, Jackie. I've got one more slide. My apologies.
Go ahead.
Keep going. Next slide, please. Founding members and sponsors. Okay, this is my last slide. So founding members and sponsors. As the FPC kicks off, there is a limited time opportunity for organizations that are looking to get immediately involved with the FPC. As a founding sponsor or as a founding member, your organization's representative will be eligible to run for the initial FPC board. Additionally, those that elect to be a founding sponsor will receive a one-time 10% discount on prepaid dues for 2019 and 2020 and will be included in FPC promotions. The initial payment of a founding sponsor can cover up to 5 years of membership dues depending on the membership tier. So that I'd refer you back to the prior slide that had the tiers in it. And that is my last slide, and I'm going to turn it back to Jackie now for more Q&A.
Thank you, Roy. We have a few questions here in the queue. Will most of the FPC meetings be held via teleconference or in person, and how often will those meetings be held?
Jackie, this is Deborah. I'll take that. So I guess my response would be dependent upon whether we were talking about general membership meetings versus the work groups that Susan outlined when she talked earlier in the call. So work groups will have many meetings that will take place through calls. We are planning a member meeting early in the spring, and we hope to have a good group of volunteers and members to attend that meeting. Right now, the vision is to have in-person membership meetings a couple of times a year, but as you know, this is a formative organization, and some of those decisions could change as we move forward, and that's another great reason why it's important that members join now to not only help advance faster payments in the United States, but to help develop this organization into a vibrant member-based organization that returns a lot of value to the members.
Thank you, Deborah. Here's another question. If corporates want to move large volumes of transactions from ACH to Faster, doesn't that cause conflicts with some FPC members? How will those kinds of issues be handled so that all perspectives are considered?
Well, it's Roy. I'll take the question. And I guess maybe the best way to answer that question is to look at what's happened in some other markets, because, you know, markets like the UK have had a faster payments infrastructure for many years now. And that question always comes up, you know, when a market introduces a faster payments capability. What does it do to other payment channels? Do you start to migrate traffic off an ACH channel, off a wire transfer channel, et cetera, into the faster payments systems? And the answer is yes, that's a possibility. And if you look historically at what's happened in the UK, there was some migration of traffic away from other payment channels to Faster. That was expected, and it was within the expected range. There wasn't a mass migration that seriously impacted the viability of their low-value channel or their real-time gross settlement system. And we expect similar outcomes here in the United States. Will there be some migration from Fedwire chips, the ACH systems? A little bit, not a lot. That's our thinking going into this. Will there be accelerated decline in check writing because of faster payments? Maybe, probably, and I think that's something that the industry would broadly welcome as we look to continue to reduce the use of checks in the U.S. marketplace over time. Will it replace some cash-based transactions? Probably, to a certain extent. So, you know, and that's the focus. The focus of faster payments, in my view, is, you know, look at the low-value transactions, P2P transactions, B2C transactions, B2B transactions. It's important to remember that we've got dollar limits on faster payment rails set at $25,000 right now, and we would anticipate those increasing over time, much like they increased over time in the UK system. But there still will be limits, so there's going to definitely be a need for high-value RTGS systems to move all the big dollar traffic that's out there. But the focus here really is on the small dollar activity, and I think it would be, you know, a general plus for the marketplace if we were able to accelerate the migration off of check into a channel like this. And of course, you've got the use cases that we talked about very early on that would be beneficial. So, long answer to the fact that we would expect some migration. We think it will be tolerable. Certainly within the limits that the systems can tolerate. And net, there's a big plus in moving in this direction.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Here's a question that's sort of educational in nature. So are faster payments related to checks, ACH, or something else? Just basically, I think the questioner is asking, what is a faster payment and how does it work, and what is the clearing process for a faster payment?
So, Jackie, this is Susan. I'll take that. So a faster payment, when it's compared to kind of traditional retail payments, faster payments have a number of distinguishing characteristics that I'm going to call, including speed and kind of the continuous service availability. So the Committee of Payments and Market Infrastructure of the Bank of International Settlements kind of defines faster payments as payments in which the transmission of a payment message and the availability of final funds to the payee occurs in real time or near real time, and on a near to a 24 and a 7-day basis as possible. So that's kind of their definition of a real-time payment. As far as settlement, that's kind of it's kind of dependent upon the network operators and how they have settlement designed for their particular systems. We know that the Fed is currently requesting comments regarding their real-time gross settlement system, possibly. So actually, settlement would depend upon today based on the network and that the network operators offers to the participants that participate on that particular rail.
Thank you, Susan. We'll take one more question here. How does the FPC fit with similar governance structures held by TCH, ABA, CBA, BPI, and will it interact with the Federal Reserve Bank?
This is Deborah. I'll take that. So the Federal Reserve has been instrumental in supporting the Faster Payments Task Force and the GIFT. They helped us stand up the Faster Payments Council. However, the Faster Payments Council is now an independent membership-based organization. We would hope that many entities like the ABA, like the ICBA, other organizations, NACHA, will participate, and some of those organizations have already committed to be founding members of the Faster Payments Council. We also hope that other entities will have a seat at the table either in an advisory capacity as needed, which could potentially include regulatory bodies, Treasury, and of course the Federal Reserve Bank.
Thank you, Deborah. Well, we did want to address a couple questions, but more in a broader sense of, how do you go about becoming a member? How do you go about learning even more about the FPC and its structure and its work groups and what it means to be a member? Well, I encourage you to visit fasterpaymentscouncil.org. When you go to that website, you can download a copy of the operating vision for the FPC as well as the bylaws. You also can view the membership application and the fee structure, whether you're an organization or an individual who's potentially interested in joining. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of that website, fasterpaymentscouncil.org. And Deborah, I know that you wanted to wrap up. Is there anything else that you wanted to communicate to our audience today?
Absolutely, Jackie. Thank you so much for the opportunity to summarize what was covered in today's call. So the FPC is a fee-based member organization that has been uniquely designed to be open to all stakeholders in the U.S. payment system. And so through this diverse segment level representation on the board and many terrific opportunities to serve on committees and work groups, all active members will have a voice in the direction of faster payments in the United States and the FPC's work. So we would now welcome all of you on this call to enjoy the benefits of FPC membership. And I want to encourage everyone that's interested in making a difference to get in on the ground floor by joining now. So again, to learn more, check out fasterpaymentscouncil.org and join us to advance the future of faster payments.
Well, I want to thank our presenters today, and I also especially want to thank our participants. We really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about the Faster Payments Council. So thank you again, and hope you all have a good day. Bye now.